I used to think soulmates were two of the same. I used to think I was supposed to look for somebody that was like me. I don't believe in soulmates anymore, and I'm not looking for anything. But if I did believe in them, I'd believe your soulmate was somebody who had all the things you didn't, that needed all the things you had, not somebody who's suffering from the same stuff you are.
Hi, Dayelle.
Hi, Amanda.
I'm really excited for this one this week.
I know you are. This is a book that you've been trying to get me to read for like forever.
Yeah, so we're doing Daisy Jones and the Six. And what's interesting about this one is I read the physical copy when it first was like kind of getting hubbub because it's Taylor Jenkins Reid and she had just come off of like, I think it was Malibu Rising was really big. I never read it. It's not that I didn't like it.
Yeah, Malibu Rising, and then Daisy Jones, and then Seven Husbands of
Evelyn Hugo, which I loved. I liked it, right? Yeah. Like, I liked it because I'm a huge, I heard that it's like Fleetwood Mac light and adjacent, and anyone that knows me is I'm a diehard Stevie Nicks Fleetwood Mac fan, right? So I was very excited about it, but I have to be honest with you, and I told you this, the audiobook blew my fucking mind.
Yeah.
I loved the audiobook. Did you listen?
Yes.
Okay.
I read it and then I listened to it.
What did you think of the audiobook?
I loved it.
It's like a full production.
It is. I'm just going to come right out here and say I loved it 1,000 times more than I loved the show.
And that's crazy to me because like I fucking love the show. But we can't continue without going to the cocktail. So I just pulled up the recipe. So if you've read the book or watched the show, it's called Honeycomb. And it's basically if you are a cocktail nerd, it's basically a gold rush. You're going to take whiskey or bourbon and like almost like a honey lemonade, but we added a little twist to it and we added smoke to it, like a nice smoked salt. And the reason why is if you watch the show, also true to the time period, all anyone does all day, every day is smoke cigarettes. Like it doesn't matter if you are giving birth, you are smoking a cigarette
and
in this time
look
period.
So cool doing it.
They look, that's like, I get why everyone smoked. The women look so sexy.
Yes.
The men look so hot. This is how I felt about Lip Gallagher and Shameless.
Yeah.
I hate cigarette smoke. I grew up with parents that were smokers. I can't stand it. But my God, did they make it look sexy?
It's just, I don't know. There's something about it.
They looked so cool.
Yeah. So cheers.
Cheers to that. I wish we were really drinking it. And today we're not.
Yeah, not today. Our brains can't handle it right now.
Okay. We can just talk about the book a little bit.
Yeah.
So,
let's dive right in.
Like I said, Fleetwood Mac adjacent.
Yeah, I think, too, I went into this not really knowing what to expect. I had no thought process at all. I just was like, I don't want to read this. It's like it's interesting because I feel like after reading this book, now I have to shut my mouth because I think I would probably really enjoy, like, it felt like a bio.
Yeah,
book.
Absolutely.
And I'm not.
Which I've been trying to get to read.
Now that I have this under my wing, I'm like, well, it was incredible. I loved the style that Taylor Jenkins Reid took. I legitimately thought it was someone interviewing these people.
Yeah.
I love the fact that it is actually Billy's daughter who is the one that is interviewing all these bandmates.
Daughter.
Which I think in the beginning you don't know that it is her, and I love that you slowly start to realize, and then at not the very end, but towards the end is when you actually know that it's the daughter that's interviewing them.
So if you haven't read the book yet and you've just watched the show, the style that the show is shot in is you keep getting these flashbacks to the bandmates that you can tell are visibly much older, right? Yeah. And somebody's interviewing them and you can't hear the interviewer. You can just see them responding to the question that's being asked.
And they seem like uncomfortable. Like
very uncomfortable.
They don't really want to talk about this stuff.
The whole story is told very much so as this band rose to stardom and had a very bloody, gruesome breakup. And if you know anything about Fleetwood Mac, it was very similar in the fact that it had very interpersonal relationships that made the band kind of split up for a little while. Stevie Nicks then went and did her solo thing. And in this, you get that kind of times like 3. It's not just 1 or 2 relationships like in Fleetwood Mac. There's a lot of crossover.
Yeah, I didn't really know the storyline. I should say the inspiration behind this book, very loosely based on this story. And when I kind of dove into it, I found it really fascinating. It's definitely different than like what the book, takes on. There's a lot more storyline with other bandmates and stuff and like side stories. And obviously, when you're reading about someone that's a real person, you're going to get one side or, whoever is telling their version
at the time, yeah.
Right. And so like this, the 2 main characters in this book, Daisy is kind of loosely based on Stevie Nicks. And then Billy, who is the guitarist and lead man in the Six, which actually they were the Dunn brothers when they first started their little bands. It's interesting that it's following a very similar, but there are definitely differences, and there's definitely like a much smaller like universe within like the true story and then the actual book. And I really loved kind of the parallels, but then I also love the fact that there's a very like clearly this author, she did a really good job of like creating this
the Lindsay
world
Buckingham, Billy Dunn character. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I really loved, I'm going to dive right into this because it was something that I picked up on right away. I loved the Camille character.
She was beautiful. But like probably one of my favorite characters in the book.
Yes. And I loved how incredibly strong this woman was and how very self-aware and very she knew her worth throughout the entire book. This woman never falters. She never, she kind of goes through the ringer with Billy, but she knows him so well and she knows how deep his love is for her that she knows that he will always choose her. And obviously, if you've not read the book, there is a incredible love story between Billy and Camille. They meet, they fall in love, they get married. There's lots of things that happen in between that. And all of this kind of happens before he even meets Daisy.
Oh, Camilla and Billy, she leaves their hometown of Pittsburgh to go with him when she's 18 and she gets into college. But she says they get into like a little argument in when they first get out there, kind of over Daisy. And she says, I didn't move here for you.
Yes.
I moved here with you. She's a very good photographer. And that's what she wants to do is be a photographer.
Well, in the beginning, when he first goes, she doesn't go with him. She's like, I'm not moving for you.
For a boy.
I'm not doing that. And then they kind of go their own ways. And when he starts, making a name for himself, he very quickly is like, wait, she's the only person I want to share this with. And so he makes the phone call that then, obviously she does come and she's with him and then they get married.
They do it very differently in the show.
Yeah.
They kind of have her go right with it. And I think it's because you are able to cut out kind of a lot of filler that way that you'd have to visibly shoot. And she's just kind of along for the ride. But I also think it's because they combine 2 characters from the book to make one character. So by doing that, the 6 is 5.
Yeah.
And they make Camilla essentially the honorary 6. But in the book, they combine, I'm going to screw up his name, I always do. They combine Chuck Williams and Pete Loving. Mm-hmm. They combine them into Chuck Loving, who is the guy, if you watch the show, he's the one that becomes a dentist. He gets into college and just wants to become a dentist. And then in the book, you've got, they're 2 different characters, and one gets drafted into Vietnam, and there's this whole drafting conversation, which I kind of wish they would have kept in because that's really poignant for that time period, which is why the people that aren't being drafted and I think you do. Is it Graham or Billy that reference in the show? If I were home, I'd probably be killed in action like everyone else.
I think Billy does in the show. I don't know about the book.
But that I think is kind of paying homage to the fact that they've killed that storyline.
Yeah.
Because it's right off the bat, you can notice that difference.
Yeah. Well, that's a perfect example. So because the book and the movie definitely take very different directions. There's a lot of things that they changed for the show. Some I was like okay with, and then others I was actually I got so angry with the show. And I think because I read the book, I listened to it, I read it, and then I watched the show. So I was so in love with the characters in the books that when I was introduced to these characters in the show, some of which, obviously were changed or slightly altered or, disappeared or whatever, I was very angry with how they wrote Camilla. I felt
you know why you keep saying Camille?
Yeah.
Because we're also rewatching Parenthood together, and Camille is
Cammy, I'm just going to call her Cammy.
The hottest woman in the world, you mean?
Stunning. I mean, the casting is
That's
incredible.
what I was just going to say. The casting in this show might be some of the I did not disagree with a single casting.
Agreed. 100%. They did it.
Knocked it out of the park. And her name is Camilla Marone.
Yeah.
Well, that's easy for her.
So, yeah, I think that was my biggest frustration. I should say one of my biggest frustration with book versus show is she was such an incredibly strong and self-aware and just like she never doubted herself ever. Now, show version, there's a lot more of the very visible jealousy. There's a lot more self-worth, like doubt. There's a lot more, does he love me enough? There's a lot more of that in the show.
So weird. I did not get any of that.
But I think because I
had a break.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think here's my theory on this, because obviously I watched the whole show up into the end, and I was kind of I shouldn't say devastated. That's not the right word. I was frustrated with the ending as well, because again, it felt like they were not giving her enough. She's such a strong character in the book.
She's a powerhouse of a woman.
Not that she isn't in the show, but I think they needed to show that vulnerability, because the reality of being with a rock star is exactly what you were seeing. Mm-hmm. And I think in a book, it's a very different, I think that character, it was a much smaller, like you got much less of her in the book than you did the show. You got a lot more of her in the show, but it was a much more not double-sided. It felt very, I wished I got book.
So I think the reason why they did that, number one, Reese Witherspoon is the one who took this on into her production company. And just to talk about, since we talked about the casting, so you had Riley Keough played Daisy Jones, which, dear God, if a role was made for a person,
it was perfection.
And then you had Sam Claflin, I always say his name wrong. He played Billy, and then Suki Waterhouse played the keyboardist, who was probably one of my favorite. Karen, I love her so much. And then you have Will Harrison, Josh Whitehouse, Sebastian Chacon, Nabia. I don't want to mess up her name because she's so gorgeous.
Yeah.
She played Simone's character, which what they did with Simone's story, very different. I know why they did it, because it was a very prominent storyline for the time period. And I think they did, if they were going to change anything for her, I'm grateful they did that.
They gave her a story besides her telling Daisy's story.
Absolutely.
Because in the book, she is strictly in the book to tell Daisy's story.
Absolutely.
And so it is a beautiful side story. And I think in the beginning, I was a little bit thrown because I was expecting the same kind of feel of her character, but they give her an entire life. She has this whole life outside of Daisy, which is beautiful and very true to the time, and very much like something that, I mean, in the show specifically, it was beautifully done. She's this incredibly talented woman.
Loosely based off Donna Summer? Is that what we
think so. That's kind of like what we found.
And it kept saying disco pioneer. So
yeah. And obviously part of the storyline there is that she's in love with a woman, and very much so during that time, it was not something that you really talked about. And she's afraid. She's very afraid. And there's a lot of times where, she goes out after I think she sees Daisy and she talks about something, and she's just like, I'm in love with this person. And I don't know that she vocalizes that, but she like goes to find her. And very quickly you realize like, oh, she's in love with her and like wants to, they want to make a future together or whatever. And there's a lot of things that happen on that side that you don't get in the book at all. There is none of that.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed that part of it, but I think again, I was expecting the narrator version of that. And so it threw me a little bit in figuring out what exactly was going to happen there. I was like, how are they going to tie this all in? And then I think one of the other big things that I didn't love how physical they made Billy and Daisy together, because in the book, it's a lot more want. It's a lot more desire.
Yeah.
And I think it's the idea of a touch or it's the idea of a kiss. But they never actually break that boundary until one moment in the book. And then from that point forward is when all this stuff just starts unraveling.
Yeah.
And I think like, although I will admit, there were moments where I was like, yes, I wanted that. It didn't happen in the book, but I loved it. Like the scene where Daisy is singing this song that was written for her by Billy, and he's pissed at her, and she's not hitting it. She's just not. And she's probably drugged out of her brain. And she storms out. She's like, I'm not doing this. I'm done. Because he's like, another take, another take, another take, another take. And she's just done. She storms out. He goes after her. And she's like, it's just not going to happen. I'm not doing this. I'm not saying this. And he's like, whatever he says to her, I don't even remember, because then he just kisses her. And it's like she goes in and she sings her heart out.
Her heart out.
And it's devastating because here's the thing. In theory, the only reason he did that was to get her to go in there and sing it because he knew it would push her to do it. But I think also he wanted desperately to kiss her.
Sure.
And it was an excuse to kiss her, but also get what he wanted.
Yeah. I think too, I'm just going to say like my view on it, because I had a much bigger break. Like, so I read this book 2021, whenever it like got big is when I started to read it.
So it was published in 2019.
Okay, so maybe 2020 I read it.
And then the show came out in 2023.
And they were supposed to come out earlier, but because of COVID,
it got pushed.
And they were going to do like a whole concert tour. Like they had this, they did whole thing planned, but COVID kind of bit it in the ass. But I think what they needed to do is, especially with Camilla's character, they had to put her on screen. A lot of what happens with these characters is happening internally.
Yes.
And you can't really show that on screen.
Yeah.
Someone's thoughts. So they created those emotions. So you've got Billy thinking these things that are happening, and now they're showing them on screen. Mm-hmm. So I'm very glad that they made her character so much bigger in the show, because it's like there's three main characters, right? There's Daisy, Camilla, and Billy. Mm-hmm. But in the book, it feels like there's only two, but Camilla is this massive thing that's driving Billy away from Daisy, making Daisy jealous of Camilla. Like it's this, she's like so huge in their story. Having her be bigger in the show, I think was really important. And I also, one thing I will say that I'm glad that they kept is she knew, right? She knew there's something there. And I think they stay true to the line in the show where she says to him, as long as you don't love her, the minute you love her, let me know and we can work through everything else. Mm-hmm. As long as you don't fall in love with her. If this is just, like essentially saying, if this is just for the music and you guys are connecting in a way that I can't connect with you through your music, we'll deal with that.
Yeah.
Just do not fall in love with her. And I'm like, this is so beautiful, but also I'm sorry, no.
Yeah.
Like the strength that she has, insane. And I also think that's kind of what they also did with Simone's character, is instead of making her such a narrator, on paper from reading the book, she is the only family besides Teddy that Daisy has. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if this kind of annoyed you, and I know why they did it, but in the book, Daisy Jones comes out a rock star. Her name is Daisy Jones. There is no Margaret. And in the show, she chooses to become this other person. In the book and in the show, similar, she has a mother who wants nothing to do with her. Like she is a problem. Mm-hmm. And in the book, you kind of have a little bit more empathy for her because she has a really horrific home life.
Mm-hmm.
And she just wants someone to pay attention to her. And she finds these people at bars and clubs and music venues. And her first interaction with a man, she's violently sexually assaulted after doing coke with him in his hotel room. And they give you a little smidgen of that. I think she's like 14 or 15.
Yeah.
They give you a smidgen of that in the show. But I didn't have the empathy for her in the show that I did in the book.
Fair. And I think I also think that the mom character in the show, you see a lot more of how terrible she is to her. It is a much smaller, early on you learn that they wanted nothing to do with her and she's craving attention. All badly, she wants is someone to pay attention to her, someone to be proud of her, someone to look at her. And so she looks for that in all the wrong places. She's never wanted for anything. She's never needed for anything. She literally can have whatever she wants. She's comes from a very wealthy family, so she has no idea what it is to like work for something. Everything came naturally to her. And so she very quickly is just thrown into a world of the wrong type of attention.
Sure.
But I think she also battles with knowing that that's not what she's actually looking for. But then she meets Simone, and in the book, again, she's a much smaller character, but she's still her rock.
Yeah.
She finds her, she moves in with her. Simone is trying to, it's during is it like late 60s, early 70s? Yeah. And so there's that whole disco, she's trying to make it, she's not making it. Then Daisy sings and it's immediately everyone's just glued to this girl. And, but there was never any jealousy. There was never any weirdness with them. It was always very much this very supportive, loving relationship. She got that support from her. And then she starts becoming more and more of a known name. And then obviously, eventually she is introduced to the Dunn brothers and the band. And do they come up? Because in the book, it's a little bit different than the show. And so I'm having a hard time remembering which is which. But in the book, Karen is the one that comes up with the six. She says it on the phone. And then in the show, I don't know.
In the show, they're sitting at a diner or something.
Oh,
and
right.
She's and I think it's a diner that Daisy works at. And they're sitting there, and she's someone says, why are we the Dunn brothers? Only two of you are Dunns, and there's so many of us not.
Eddie.
Yeah,
Eddie says it.
Poor Eddie.
I know.
Eddie, oh my boy.
Although, can we talk about...
He deserved to be punched in the face. But he's why are we called the Dunn brothers? And I think someone else says, we should be called, the resurrection, something ridiculous. And they're no, absolutely not. And then they come up with the name The Six. And I think Karen is I don't hate that.
Yeah.
I don't hate The Six.
Yeah.
And one other thing I will say is Karen and Graham, I mean, I know they're not the story, but that is...
In the show,
there is a moment at the very end, and again, spoilers across the board, but at the very end when he says, Karen let me go by telling me that she wasn't going to love me like that. And then they cut right to Karen, and he's married with kids and all this stuff. And you get this beautiful moment where she gets pregnant and he is so excited and she does not want children. Mm-hmm. And so in the show, Camilla takes her to a clinic and, they're in an elevator and he's oh, you should really go see a doctor if you're tired. And she's I took care of it. And it's such a real moment. I think they did that so perfectly across the board. And you can just tell that everything changes for them. But in the show, when she's being interviewed much later, and she said, I told him what he needed to hear.
Yeah.
Not what I thought. And it's just she let him go because she knew she wasn't going to want to have children and that he wanted to be a dad. And she just gave him this gift. And I think that's probably why I'm so obsessed with the show, the book. The whole story it is a perfect example of how messy love is. Mm-hmm. And how many different forms it can come in, right? Mm-hmm. Just Daisy and Billy. like talk about them. Like their love, that is love. Yeah. That is a version of love. Are they soulmates on paper? Maybe, but they're not good for each other.
Yeah.
You know, they would be each other's demise.
Yeah.
This is who you are.
Yes, it is. Daisy, we don't have to fight it anymore. You and me, we're broken. Let's just be broken together. Let's just be broken together. Let's be broken.
Stop.
Just be together.
I think that's the thing is they saw the world. What is that line that's in the book and the movie that they saw the world the same way?
Yeah,
what they loved about the world. Like they both loved the same things about the world. Both hated the same things about the world. You know, what they struggled with, it was the same.
Doesn't he say like what set me on fire set Daisy on fire?
And I think that's another perfect point is I think that's what I struggled with Cammie in the show is she's battling a lot of this, like knowing that whether she knows he's in love with her or that there's feelings for Daisy, she knows something's going on there. And I think in the book, she right off the bat tells Billy, I know what you're feeling towards her, but I also know that you'll never leave me. Yeah. And I think that strength and that security in yourself, knowing that like, I trust you completely to put that on someone else, I think it put him in a place where like he would never do anything because she had so much faith. He went into, he missed the birth of their child. I mean, he does show up. In the show, it's a little bit different. In the book, he is there, but like goes right to rehab after that.
Yeah, he can't handle it.
And I think that's a beautiful, it's a beautiful storyline because it really shows how low he got. And then he built himself back up for his family. I mean, for himself, but it was for his family, definitely. And I think in the show, it's a little bit different. Even when he starts, to kind of slide off the sober wagon, I think he goes through this, in the book, he doesn't drink something until he's sitting at a bar and he's holding a glass and he's kind of like debating whether or not to take this drink. And someone comes up to him and starts talking to him about like, oh, my daughter, aren't you Billy? Dunn, my daughter's a huge fan, like all this stuff, or my girlfriend, something like that. And the whole time he's holding this glass, the whole time. And it's like, obviously he's going to take a sip or whatever. And there's like a point where he finally takes a taste. And like, there's a whole thing about him tasting it. And his whole thing was just the smell of it would bring him back, and like he wanted to drink it. And so he drinks it, and then that's it. He then, goes and like, it's very different in the book than it is in the show. In the show, you see him kind of lose it. He gets to a breaking point because Cammie sees Billy and Daisy in their like living room or their porch
in his
or wherever that
parents' porch. Yeah. His mom's porch.
They're having like a very intimate moment.
Yeah.
And
they're doing a crossword or something, and like they touch heads together, and then he's like basically saying like, yes, I want to be with you, but I'm never going to.
Yeah, and that was a little bit off for me too, because they don't have any of these moments in the book. They don't have any moments where they're alone like this. They very much try to keep themselves separated. The moment they have together where there's a kiss is when they're sitting at the piano playing, and she, like Daisy obviously does that. But I think that is a point where Cammie realizes like, this is like, he's in love with her, and like, what am I doing here? Like, why am I watching this happen? And so she's devastated, and it kind of blows up from there. That doesn't happen in the book. And I appreciated both versions, because I think in the book, Cammie is very different than show Cammie. And I think to make sense of their story in the show, they needed to show that very vulnerable part where like, she's seeing, and at first you don't even realize this is happening, right? You're seeing this scene through the eyes of Billy and Daisy, and then later,
and you hear a door shut.
Yeah.
and they separate and stand up. And he's like, oh, I didn't know you were home.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Cammie heard the whole thing, saw the whole thing. And so she's devastated. She's very upset and angry. And she basically, they get into an argument in the hotel hallway. And, she's just like, are you in love with her? Just tell me, are you in love with her? And he can't say it. And then, of course, who comes up but Daisy.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that I really missed in the show that happens in the book is Daisy goes on a bender and she's
just wrecked. Yeah. Like
And
on the verge of ODing. She's just
yeah,
disaster.
it's bad. And she's in the hallway. She can't get into her room. She literally just slumps down on the floor and she hears someone coming up. And it's Cammie and the daughter. She helps her into the room. She brings her in. She lays her down. She talks to her. And it's just this beautiful moment between them. And like you see so much of, again, Cammie's strength in the book is just incredible because she's like, I know. And that's like the conversation is just very, it's I don't even think Daisy actually says very much, but it's just this moment of them like understanding and just like, it's okay, just sleep it off.
Yeah, they do it a little bit in the show where Daisy says, he's telling the truth. Nothing's happening between us. Camilla says, well, something has happened. Essentially, like, okay, you may not be sleeping together, but like there's something there. I'm not stupid. Like don't insult me. And you can tell Daisy's heartbroken because she says he's yours. Like he'll always be yours.
He'll always choose you.
He's going to choose you. And I still get a lot of Camilla's strength in the show because they show it in different ways. And there's this really beautiful moment. She already knows that something's happening between Daisy and Billy. And in the show, Daisy tells her at the picnic, you're really good with her. And she said, yeah, you'll see someday. Like, and she says, no, in my experience, family doesn't treat each other like that. Mm-hmm. And instead of letting her sit in that, like I would, like you are trying to fuck my husband, I'm going to let you feel like shit about how shitty your life is. She gives her this gift of, have you ever thought about it? And she says, oh, no, I wouldn't be a good mother. I wouldn't want to put a kid through what I went through. And she said, and that's why you won't. Don't count yourself out, Daisy. And then you flash forward to the very end of the show. It's the last episode of the show. And she says that everything good in her life was given to her by Camilla believing in her and Camilla being her biggest fan. Camilla telling her that she could be a mom. Camilla telling her that Camilla basically begging her to be in the band and then come back into the band. But those things happen in the book too, just in different ways, and they present it differently.
Well, and Camilla also asks her at the point where it's like a lot of turmoil, she asks her to leave. She tells her, leave.
Like just
it's
like,
time.
You've done your damage here.
Yeah.
Time to go. That does not happen in the show.
No, but you know what I also thought was crazy is in the show, Camilla has an affair, which does not happen in the book.
With the turdiest turd of all the turds?
I know.
Are you freaking kidding me?
I screamed at the TV. I was like, are you for real right now?
That line, though, that they gave her was fire. Fire. There's been so many secrets. Billy has so many secrets. I just wanted one of my own. Like, are you kidding me?
And it never goes any further. Nothing else ever happens.
And he is so, but
there's no,
he's in love with her. In the beginning, he says, oh, I used to walk her home from Sunday school. Like, I know Camilla.
Also not in the book. But I understand that added
I think they were going to do it like they had to start at the beginning.
Okay, and then one other thing that just made me so frustrated because I was like, but this is such an important part that happens in the book is Teddy.
I knew you were going to say that.
Teddy doesn't die in the show. And that is like the moment in the book where everything goes to
Teddy does die,
garbage.
But they don't talk about it until it's a blip.
And
Teddy died in 83.
Yeah, it doesn't happen until after.
Yeah, Teddy died in 83 and he was slumped over his mixing board doing what he loved. No, Teddy is the only father Billy's ever known. Teddy is everything to Billy, also everything to Simone, also everything to Daisy. Like, he is the one person that believed in the three of them individually. And I mean, first of all, oh my God, they cast him so perfectly.
They really
I loved it so much.
It was
But
perfect.
I'm sad that we didn't get that like epic break. Like that is the moment that Billy starts to unravel. I think like that's when
It is.
It's like the string starts
100%.
to get pulled.
Well, and I think here's the other thing too is Daisy and Teddy don't have as much of a relationship. I can say words as they do in the show in the book.
Yes.
Their relationship is way deeper in the show than what you get in the book. And so I did appreciate like that dynamic. But in the book, like even the scene where they start writing the songs together, Teddy says, go use my pool house to write these songs. In the show,
Daisy's breaking
they
in.
break in, which is like a sweet, it's like that moment of like, you know, they're finally working together. They're finally realizing like, oh my God, we're basically the same person.
Talk about enemies to lovers though. Talk about the enemies to lovers trope.
Fair.
And I will say something that I love about this book and maybe why I love the show so much. I felt it on the page. I felt it more on the screen. You don't know who to root for. There are moments watching the show you want Daisy and Billy to end up together when they are writing the songs and they are like goofing around and they are so happy. You're like, Jesus, they're perfect.
Yeah.
And then they flash back to Camilla and you're like, no, wait a second.
Yeah, wait.
Look at that gorgeous, strong, beautiful, understanding, incredible human being raising your child.
Maybe one of the most beautiful women I've ever
I
seen.
just cannot believe how attractive she is.
Like, she's stunning.
Those lips. What hath you done, ma'am?
I don't know.
Camilla Marone. Tell a girl your secrets.
I mean, like, whoa. Okay, we haven't even touched on this part of the story. Can we talk about Nikki?
Well, Nikki.
Okay, I will say,
Nikki.
I will say, I'll give the show this. I appreciated the little bit more storyline that they gave Nikki in the show because
I hate him so much in the book.
Exactly.
I hated him less in the show. I felt bad for him in the show.
Exactly. Until the moment.
Are you kidding me?
And I think I was, this is terrible to say this, but I was like praying that happened because I was like, oh my God, are they going to not do this? Are they not going to give him this terrible, terrible thing that happens and he's just a total piece of
They
poopy?
did it. I was so pleased with how they did that to screen.
I was bawling.
When he goes in there so hot. First of all, we haven't even talked about this. Timothy Oliphant was cast perfectly as Rod. Like, just a little bit sleazy.
Yes.
But kind of cool.
The wigs, though. Woof.
Hilarious. I mean, that's 70s hair, though. That's 70s hair.
I know.
But he... just that scene of Billy busting down the door. Because you get this, like, manic... Daisy and Nikki seem to be having the time of their lives. They are jumping on the bed like little kids. They are manic. They are coked out of their freaking gourds. And when you don't know that this has happened in the show, the way that they shot it, you know that they're, whatever, but you don't know that she is OD'd.
Yeah. You get a little bit because they're like, she's like jumping on the bed and then
she like lays down.
And then that's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
And then you've got Billy banging on the door with Rod and like, you think he's about to like scream at Daisy and Rod's just going to like pull him back or whatever. And then the way that the actor that played Nikki did that scene so perfectly, panicking, not letting him in, panicking, not letting him in. And then just Billy goes from being, I'm going to strangle Daisy to sobbing over her lifeless body. And what a cool look into like the music scene in the 70s that Rod automatically has the doctor to call with all the code words that he uses, like
toothache or whatever he says.
Yeah. 909 has a toothache or whatever he says. And I just loved the way they shot that. He's bawling his eyes out. He thinks he's dead. She's not coming back. What does he do? He starts packing a bag.
Yeah.
And when he started to do that, I was like, thank God they are going to do this scene justice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think too, I loved the scene in the book. It's slightly different. It's a bathtub. He fills it with water. He puts her in the bathtub. I think the scene that they did in the show is beautifully done because it just shows this raw emotion of like, oh my God, she's dead. Like she's
not alive.
Gone. She's not breathing. And you get a lot more of Billy's inner monologue as this is all happening. Obviously in the show, you're not hearing that, right? You're seeing what's happening. But the whole time he's he put her in a bath. He put her in a bath. He put her in a bath and left her. And
She could have drowned.
You're seeing this.
Like, it's insane.
And you're also getting Daisy's side of it as this is all happening in the book. So you're hearing her say, he left me in a bath. He didn't do anything. He didn't do anything. And she like reiterates that over and over again. And it's just like this beautiful moment of like this man who's supposed to love her, her husband, left her in a pile of water, whether it's in a shower or in a bath, and was
outie.
I put her in a bath. What else am I supposed to do? And then you have Billy, who literally just, in the book, he's the one that's, calling 911 or whatever. But I think that was a beautiful, like, both versions, obviously different, but also it shows that same very raw, like.
I kind of love the badassery they give Daisy when she wakes up and she says what happened and sees the thing in her arm, knows she OD'd, what happened.
And he's there. Not Eddie, sorry.
Nikki.
Sorry, Eddie, You're still
a shithead.
Nikki, and he's like, it's okay. And she's like,
you just had a little too much.
What happened?
You just did a little too much. And she knew right away.
And then he tries to go after her, which is crazy.
I love that scene when the whole band.
Me too. Little mustache.
Oh my God, he's so cute. He just like gets right in the middle of her and he's like, we're done.
Walk away.
Bye.
Walk away.
You're done here. One thing we haven't talked about.
Mm-hmm.
So Riley Keough and Sam, Claflin, I'm never going to get that right. They both, when they were asked to audition for this, were like, yeah, I can sing and I play instruments. And she was like, Riley said, I thought they'd believe me because like my grandpa's Elvis and my mom is Lisa Marie Presley.
Yeah.
Like, I'm pretty sure they thought that was going to happen. No musical talent whatsoever. Did not know how to sing. Did not know how to play an instrument. Neither did Sam. And he was like, I figured by the time, if I got it, I could figure it out. And so
I love that kind of stuff
me
when
too.
you find that out.
And so they essentially went to band camp. All of them did. And it was like months and months and months of them learning the instruments. Like that's another thing is they sing all these songs.
Yeah.
They play these instruments. And I thought it was really cool. So that the tracks you hear in the movie, or I'm sorry, in the show, they are the pre-recorded. Like they worked on those in the studio. But during the show, they had never played in front of a live audience before. So that first concert scene, they made them play in front of a concert. They are actually like, because they wanted to get the jitters out. Like, they need to know what it's really like. And I don't know if they use that footage, but they made them play a concert for people. And every other time they left audio running in case they did something cool while they were doing that to add then to the tracks that they were going to use into the show. So
I like that.
I love that. And I also think that we're not giving them enough credit. These songs are incredible.
They're so good.
Like
they're so catchy.
My whole drive into Brooklyn today, listen to the album. They're so good.
And then, songs. Can we talk about the costumes that Daisy wears? I want all of them.
She is very Stevie Nicks, right?
Totally.
Like very big arms, wings,
vibe,
very one-winged.
hair.
Oh my gosh, the earrings, I
loved it.
I just really want to do cocaine with her.
I mean, like, they glamorize that a whole lot.
It's the 70s, baby.
Exactly. But it's still, I don't know. It's just such a good, it was well done.
Wait, you have your little timeline here.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to us.
Okay, so this is the breakdown of like for Stevie Nicks and Lindsay.
Yeah. Oh, Lindsay.
So I I dove into this a little bit because I was really curious about the comparison of this. And again, I kind of went into this blindly, so I didn't really know the whole backstory of this. And then like the rumors, I should say. Not that
that's a good Stevie Nicks, Fleetwood Mac callback.
Exactly. So it says that Stevie Nicks and Lindsay Buckingham, it's supposedly one of the like most turbulent love stories of all time.
It really is.
But not just love, also heartbreak, and then just the creative brilliance behind these two incredibly talented
Oh,
people.
yeah.
And so this is kind of the breakdown. So it says early love and musical partnership was 1960s and from the 1960s to 1974 is when they first kind of met and like, had a little something. It says that I'm sorry, let me back that up. They met in high school. I didn't know this. This is a little
I did not
tidbit.
know this. Okay.
So Stevie and Lindsay met in high school in the late 60s and then later formed a musical duo, Buckingham Nicks. I was like, okay, all right. Then they moved to LA. They struggled, like majorly struggling, like financially, just couldn't
make it happen.
Right. So they pursued more music and their romantic relationship. And then they joined Fleetwood Mac and Rising Flame, which I guess, is that the same band or is that like two different bands? I'm not a band person, so I don't know anything.
Okay. Fleetwood Mac is the band.
So
they
Mick
went on to.
Fleetwood invited Lindsay to join Fleetwood Mac, and he agreed on one condition, that Stevie could also join. So, okay. I guess that's what they're saying. So join the two of them joining Fleetwood Mac and rising to fame, not Rising Flame. That's my note. I just read it wrong. Okay.
I'm not that's one of the more hilarious things you've done. It's right up there on Folktown when we said, do you want to reread that? And you went, nope.
I'm literally reading my notes and I'm like, Rising in Flame. I don't know. I've never heard of that band. No, they joined Fleetwood Mac.
Okay.
And they started rising to fame. Okay. So that is a little detail. So they obviously they joined, right? They released their first album together in 1975 and it's massive. It's huge. It's big. However, tensions are starting to, and it said that during the making of Rumors, so 1977,
one of my favorite albums.
Stevie and Lindsay have a bitter breakup, but they continue to work together
and make the most insane music.
Crazy,
it's just the best.
So it says like rumors drama. Which I would assume is based on the fact that they were not together anymore. And then they both wrote songs about their relationship struggles. One was Go Your Own Way. And then
Silver Springs.
Dreams.
Dreams.
I was like, wait, let me read as I'm reading my notes. Yeah, so Go Your Own Way was Buckingham, so Lindsay's take on the breakup, and then Dreams is Nikki's response to that song, which, okay.
Stevie Nicks' response?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And then they kept channeling their emotions through their music. They continued to work with the band, kept making music. Then they had a bunch of like solo careers, whatever, but they continued to have like a lot of tension between the two of them. And then it says they continued to have a complicated relationship. Lindsay was super bitter. Stevie felt that Lindsay never fully let go of his anger. Okay. All right. And then Stevie went on to have a solo career, super successful. Edge of 17, Stand Back. And then Lindsay also had solo projects. And then it says Lindsay eventually was fired from Fleetwood Mac in 2018.
Yeah.
2018.
I need you to go online and I need you to watch Stevie Nicks sing Silver Springs.
Okay.
In the 1997 version, their reunion.
I didn't know any of this stuff.
Watch her sing it to Lindsay. She keeps eye contact with him the way that Billy, and I know that this is intentional. It's the way that Billy and Daisy do when she's singing Regret You on stage and she's pissed and they're like angry singing at each other. It is a song about Lindsay cheating on Stevie and she is singing it to his soul. Like she turns. She does not look at the crowd. She's looking dead in that motherfucker's eyes. And she is like, you done wrong to me. It is the most incredible, just for like once a month I watch that.
Yeah. Well, okay, so that brings us back to the end of the show.
Oh, God. Okay, yeah. This is the heartbreak
And it's
part.
pretty parallel to the book, too. I think the biggest difference is in the show, Billy leaves to go get Cammy.
Yeah.
Which I don't love, but we'll let him have it. In the final concert in the book, they sing together on the same mic, and very, like, specifically, they sing, I never remember the name of the song they sang, but it's
Honeycomb. Yeah.
Honeycomb in Billy's words. So obviously Daisy, when she joined, she changed the words, and Billy was very angry about that. But the final concert, she sings it in his words.
Which is essentially go to Camilla.
Exactly.
And in the show, they have this moment.
He physically goes to Camilla.
But they have this moment in the show where before they go back out for the encore and they're going to sing that song, he just picks her up and he's like making out with her and he's like, she's leaving me. She's leaving me.
Yeah.
It's intense.
Yeah, it is.
And then all of a sudden he takes her Coke and goes to do a line or goes to do a pump. And she's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, she already knew he was drinking it. And she's like, this is not who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, it is now. This is who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And they go back out on stage and she does this beautiful speech about how love can sometimes be really dark and hurt really bad, but it doesn't have to be. And you need to find the person that brings you to the light, because that's what true love is. And then he's crying. That scene in the show, he is crying his eyes out and he cannot sing the song. So she just looks at him and she mouths to him, go.
Yeah. And
he runs off.
Yeah.
And very different than the book, right? But I think if they were going to change it, I'm glad that they did it that way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I prefer the book's way of doing it, but
and the two,
we have to talk about the end of the show.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing is like the book ends pretty much after the concert. The book is basically over. They talk a little bit more about each of the bandmates and why they were leaving and how they were leaving and that whole thing. And they talk a little bit about, the interviewer, which is now you kind of know that it's Billy's daughter. It's Cammy. And they also have 3 kids in the book. In the show, they only ever have one.
It seems like they only have one. Yeah.
And I don't know. I liked the fact that they had multiple kids because it kind of shows that, like,
she was at home busting her ass raising these children.
Exactly. Yeah. And they have twins. Like, one of the things is that they have twins. Anyway, they very quickly, like, I don't even know. It's the interviewer is the daughter, and she's saying, I have a message from.
I'm going to start crying.
I know, because it's such
So you find out that Camilla has cancer and she dies, right?
Yes. Before they're done with the book.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And she basically is like, but Mom had one last thing to tell you. And she wanted me to wait until now to tell you. And it's basically Cammy. In the show, it's a video of Cammy telling her daughter that, tell Dad to call Daisy.
But in the show also, when she's interviewing Daisy, there's a moment where she says, like, it's Camilla, and she says, well, who are you talking to? And she's off screen and it's just the audio, and you could hear that she's getting her mom's mic ready and stuff. And she says, well, everybody. And she's like, are you planning to talk to Daisy? And she's like, well, I don't know. And she said, I think you should. Mm-hmm. And when you do, you tell Daisy Jones that I am her biggest fan. Mm-hmm. And I've always believed in her. It's like this really beautiful moment. And then I want you to tell your father to call Daisy Jones.
He's
when she does.
When some time has passed or whatever. Yeah.
And when he does, tell Daisy Jones to answer. Yeah. Oh my God, are you kidding me?
It's beautiful. And it's very similar to the book. I think the biggest difference is you don't know what happens after that. It just ends.
Yes. In the show, you see him walking up to the door and she answers.
Which is beautiful.
It's really beautiful.
It's beautiful.
And she says, because you two bastards still owe me a song.
Yeah.
Can you just imagine them writing a song for
Yeah.
her after she's gone?
I also think like in the book, Daisy has daughters, where in the show
She has
a daughter,
Yeah.
and it's a very small, quick little blip that you see. But in the book, that's like a main part of her like redemption,
Yes.
right? Like she never thought she would be a mom, and I think she has 3 or she has 2.
More than one. I don't remember.
Yeah. And like these beautiful, daughters and they're her whole world. Like she, and I think like that's just another moment of like in the book, Cammie was always very much like, don't, like what you were saying, like don't write yourself off. Like this, maybe right now it's not your time, but like
You can do this.
you can do this.
And I mean, okay. I know we're gonna have different answers for this one.
I know. This was a hot one.
It's a hot button ticket here. If you haven't watched or read it, it's beautiful. I really recommend it, especially if you're a music fan. You like this era, you like this type of music. They really did the book justice as far as the songs go. I really enjoyed. Very rarely do you get to read a book about a band and then the band comes to life.
Yeah.
And you get to listen to the music.
And all the songs are in the book too.
Yeah.
So like that's
The lyrics are already there.
Yeah.
Everything's there. I love it.
Yeah.
But what would you say, Dale? Watch it or read it?
This is a read it for me.
And it's funny because this is a both for me, leaning more towards a watch it. And I think it's because I'm really leaning hard into the Fleetwood Mac side of things.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed seeing that like brought to screen with the music. I just really enjoyed the music aspect of it and being able to hear what I was seeing on page and thought I could hear.
Fair.
It's a both with I'm leaning more towards a watch it. And it's not that it's a bad book. I loved the book. The book was incredible. But the audiobook blew the book out of the water for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Fair.
night and day.
Fair. I think the feelings that this book set for me while reading it, I didn't need to see the show.
Yeah. Beautiful, right?
I think the show is beautiful. I think there was a lot of stuff that was added that may or may not have been needed. I think some of the stuff was great. Some of the stuff could have done without. But like I would have been perfectly content with just reading this book. And I will read it again. Like it was great.
I'm so glad. I'm so proud of you, by the way.
I know.
For tapping out. Like, you guys don't understand. If it was up to Dayelle, we would do
Never.
Jane Austen and Romantasy.
Always.
This was a big difference for you, and I'm very proud of you.
Yeah, it was good. Now it's like great. Now I have to actually like read other genres.
You're going to like Evelyn
Great.
Hugo, I think.
Well, of course. It's by the same author.
Yeah, but I just think you're
so,
going to like it. Also, audiobook.
You're not the first person to say that.
Sorry.
All right,
Okay, guys.
Bye.
Our editor is Katie Yonner. Our associate producer is Grace Heerman. And our senior content producer is Kyle Bosch. Our executive producer is Tommy West. And Watch It or Read It is produced by Gotham West Studios.